Good evening, everyone. My name is Mari Carpenter. I'm a member of the Wakasa Memorial Committee, and we welcome you to tonight's commemoration of the murder on April 11th, 1943, exactly 82 years ago today, of Mr. James Wakasa, an inmate of the Topaz concentration camp. He was killed by a prison guard as he was taking an evening stroll with his dog. Issei's in the camp created a stone memorial in his honor, which was quickly ordered destroyed by the camp authorities. Instead, it was buried and lost to history until Nancy Ukai, with us tonight, discovered in the National Archives a copy of a hand-drawn map of Mr. Wakasa's death spot. This led to the stone's rediscovery by archaeologists near where James Wakasa died. In 2021, it was unceremoniously ripped from its site, despite the advice of archaeologists to leave it in place. This event has opened a wound in the Japanese American community, which has yet to be healed. We are still waiting to hear from the Topaz Museum Board about 6 points we propose to move forward together. We proposed them at a conference in Los Angeles 6 months ago. Tonight, we remember our ancestors through film and honor the importance of speaking out. The stone has awakened us to our American history, which is being repeated now. 3 filmmakers who we are fortunate to have with us tonight will present their films. The first one is Murder in the High Desert by Emmy Award-winning director Emiko Omori, presents the story of the murder and the controversy of its unearthing. This will be followed by Claudia Katayanagi film, which demonstrates how beautiful art can be made from tragedy. Visual artist Glenn Mitsui will show a work in progress that he is creating for this month's Manzanar pilgrimage. Tonight, we also have Wakasa committee member Lauren Araki, Topaz descendant. Nancy Ukai will also show slides that tell the backstory of how the papier-mâché stone came to be made and our plans for the next year. We will have time for comments and questions at the end. We encourage your participation through the chat function. Before we begin, may I ask for a brief moment of silence? This is the backstory of what we're going to talk about tonight, in case you don't know what the issues have been around this monument, Murder in the High Desert, a 20-minute film by Emiko Omori, a survivor of the Poston, Arizona concentration camp. Let's play the film.
Topaz concentration camp, Central Utah, April 11th, 1943. 7:30 to 7:35 p.m. Weather, fair, mild westerly winds, visibility good. Dinner's over. James Hatsuaki Wakasa leaves his barrack with his small dog on an evening stroll, perhaps looking for a souvenir, an arrowhead left by the former inhabitants. With sudden force, a single shot to his chest from a prison guard strikes him dead. The government cover-up is immediate. Fellow inmates create a stone monument in his honor. The authorities order it destroyed. In defiance, the inmates bury it at the site of his murder. Years later, Nancy Ukai finds a hand-drawn map of the murder site at the National Archives. September 2020, 77 years later. Using this map, archaeologists Mary Farrell and Jeff Burton find what appears to be the top of a buried stone. To their amazement, they realize that this is the buried stone monument. It is the most significant discovery of all the camps. A committee is formed of National Park Service representatives, Topaz descendants, archaeologists, Topaz Museum Board members, and a historian to discuss how to handle the artifact. Archaeologists recommend that it stay in the ground. 2 grants for funding a professional archaeological investigation are offered. Instead, July 27th, 2021, 10 months later. Without notifying the community, the Topaz Museum Board drags the monument out of its resting place, irreparably desecrating the monument and destroying the archaeological site. Four months later, outraged and grieving members of the Wakasa Memorial Committee traveled to Topaz to consecrate the monument and the site where Mr. Wakasa was murdered.
We are here today to mourn the murder of James Wakasa, and we are here to rejoice at the discovery of the memorial stone. We are here because the stone which our grandfathers buried was shoveled up and dragged away by the Topaz Museum. We are here today to share our outrage and to offer our support to all Japanese who have suffered this insult. The 1,000-pound stone is concrete evidence of the injustice and the daily threat of wanton murder our families faced every day. They were confined at Topaz and other concentration camps.
가곤 조세간 이심조도 시간회 만족 세조쇼각.
The first time I saw the monument, I thought it was beautiful. On the outside, it is plain and simple, solid and strong, just like our parents and grandparents. But on the inside, it is rich, complex, and deep, just like our parents and grandparents. My name is Patrick Hayashi. My parents were incarcerated at the Topaz concentration camp. I was born there. The monument embodies the spirit of all the people who were imprisoned in Topaz. It contains the souls of everyone who died in Topaz. It protects the souls of all the young Japanese American men who volunteered to fight for America, and who fought and who fell at Anzio, Salerno, Monte Cassino. It holds the proud spirit of the Issei landscapers who built this monument. Mr. Wakasa's monument is the single most important object ever found at Topaz or any other Japanese American concentration camp. This monument changes the narrative of all the camps in a fundamental way. The camps were not safe, benign places where people were treated humanely. Yes, there were dances and baseball games, but the shot that killed Mr. Wakasa was the 10th shot fired at Topaz. Even after Mr. Wakasa was killed, guards continued to fire more shots at other prisoners. People were terrorized by the cruel, cold-blooded behavior of the guards, but the Issei and Nisei did not passively accept their imprisonment.
We could not imagine a man and his dog trying to jump over the fence or go through the fence or whatever.
Now, the guard didn't have to fire. That old man couldn't have scaled that fence, barbed wire fence anyway. And as I say again, they said that the rifle was supposed to be pointed outwards for people that might harm the Japanese Americans. And then to have that happen, it was inexcusable.
I was frightened because this meant, and of course the rumors were going like crazy, but this meant we were totally vulnerable. We were helpless. There was no way of defending ourselves from anybody who just got trigger happy, wanted to shoot us.
Tension was thick at Topaz when the next day dawned.
Well, as we come into camp, we could see groups of people standing around the buildings, very quiet. Every one of them had a club or anything that he could find that it could be used as a weapon, was equipped. The atmosphere was extremely tense.
Camp residents went out on strike. The military police deployed machine guns and tear gas bombs to repel the riot they thought was imminent. Only reassurances from Camp Director Charles Ernst that a full investigation was in the works eased the tension.
July 2022, 1 year after the desecrating unearthing of the monument. Topaz survivors, descendants, and allies traveled to the remnants of Guard Tower 8 and walked to the site of the murder. The guard tower is 315 yards from James Wakasa, the length of 3 football fields. 156 hand-folded paper flowers are hung on the barbed wire fence. Each flower represents one of the 140 inmates who died at Topaz and the 16 Japanese American soldiers from the camp killed in World War II. The flowers trace the trajectory of the single bullet that pierces James Wakasa's chest and severs his spinal cord. He falls to his knees, then slumps on his back, blood oozing into the desert sand. Death is mercifully quick. This is not a warning shot. This is target practice. 2 months earlier, Mr. Wakasa had been cleared to leave the camp after securing a job.
The stone monument, the 2,000 people who attended his funeral, and the thousands of paper flowers women folded to comfort his spirit show that the Issei and Nisei were proud, defiant, and courageous. They used whatever was at hand to protest his murder. The monument is evidence of resistance to the murder of James Wakasa and the unjust incarceration of 125,000 persons of Japanese ancestry. The monument symbolizes the deaths of the 1,870 who died in confinement, including 7 who were killed by the U.S. military. Because Mr. Wakasa's monument is so important historically and spiritually, archaeologists recommended that it should be left in the ground. Everyone agreed that it should not be touched until a comprehensive conservation plan could be developed by the Japanese American community in consultation with experts on historical preservation. However, in an act that defied logic and basic human decency, the Topaz Museum director ordered a heavy equipment operator to take a forklift and chain and rip the monument from the ground. The director said that she pulled the monument out of its resting place to keep it safe from vandals. This makes no sense whatsoever. Only a small portion of the monument was visible, and it could easily have been concealed with a few scoops of dirt. And even if vandals had found it, what could they have done to a 2,000-pound stone that was almost completely buried in the ground? Spit on it? Spray paint it? Shoot it? The people who ripped out the monument did much more damage with their forklift and chain than any vandals could have possibly done. In the process, the monument was cracked, and the hallowed ground, the sacred place, where Mr. Wakasa's soul had rested in peace for 77 years, was desecrated. There were no archaeologists, no historians, no Japanese Americans there to make sure that this monument and Mr. Wakasa's soul were treated with respect. Stanford archaeologist Ian Hodder has said that a sacred object, when it is taken from the earth, can have the power to unite a community or to tear it apart. The Wakasa monument has done both. It has created deep divisions within the Japanese American community, but it has also created strong, unbreakable bonds of friendship. The 2,000 people who attended Mr. Wakasa's funeral were comforted by the words of the hymn sung at the funeral. Rock of ages, cleft for me, let me hide myself in thee. Let the water and the blood from
We thank you all for being here with us. Most of all, we thank our friends and families for having left us this evidence.
80th memorial of Mr. Wakasa's murder, April 2023, walking from his barrack to the site of his death. The Topaz Museum Board has unilaterally announced that it is taking the monument for its museum without inclusive meetings with community members. The stone monument is not the property of the Topaz Museum, but a spiritual object of history and heritage that belongs to the Japanese American community and to our nation. Consent of the community is essential in decisions on the final display and narration of the Wakasa history. This policy is being applied to indigenous artifacts in museums. Perpetrators of a heritage crime must not be allowed to unilaterally decide the future of our community heritage. This gift from our ancestors to remember their resistance.
That was a really powerful and moving, informative film. And Emiko, I don't know if you want to say a few words about the film before we do open it to questions, but I'm just asking if you do want to say something about the making of that film.
I don't really, the film I think speaks for itself, and why I made it, or it still moves me to watch it. It makes me sad of what came down around it. And it makes me sad that it has created some, or maybe even unearthed, deep divisions that had existed in the past and have now become unearthed. So I hope that these forums like today will help with the healing of our community. If there are any questions?
We're going to open it up for questions. So do we have any questions, comments? Because this was a powerful film. So we want to just open it up and give people a chance to kind of reflect to the film and then ask any questions about it.
If you'd like to use the reactions to raise your hand, then we can call you out to ask your question live. If you'd like to have one of us read out your question and have it answered, then you could just type it in the chat.
It makes me sad, really, to see that the state of the site is just wearing away, and that we will never be able to recover what might, if it had been excavated professionally with real archaeologists, if what we could have learned. and that is lost. But on the other hand, the unearthing has actually created much, many people getting now involved when they had not been involved before in our story. And that's what I call that the stone is doing its work, that the Issei, I believe, left a little bit showing so we would find it. And that is remarkable for me to think about, that they, 83 years ago, had the foresight to leave something for us to say, not to forget what had happened. And now it's, here we are in this forum, and it's because of Mr. Wakasa's stone.
Well, I think we have a question. Erin, do you want to unmute yourself and just ask the question?
Yeah, sure. I'm so moved every time I see the film Emiko, and it's been several times that I've seen it. I think the words that you and Patrick chose are so careful and loving. And I just wondered if, as time goes on, are there other additions that you would make? You added an epilogue, you added a note about 2024. Just wondering if there's sort of any current thoughts, that you would tack on if possible.
Well, it is an ongoing story, so we keep adding things. And in fact, tonight we're going to show you where we are. Okay, the Topaz Museum Board has not responded, but we're continuing our own work. And I am so pleased and happy to now turn it back to Mari to present the next iteration of this story, which is very, very exciting.
Is there any other questions? Do we have any more? Claudia, I was just going to say if there's any other questions. Okay, you can still, if you want to put it in the chat, like Max said, or you can raise your hand, but we just want participation. But I'm going to no longer delay. We're going to show the next film, and now we'll show Spirit Rock, a 4-minute film by Topaz descendant Claudia Katayanagi, who lives in San Francisco Bay Area. And so Claudia, I'm going to have them start the film, and we'll have some conversation afterwards. Yeah, I wanted to say is every time I see Spirit Rock, it is mesmerizing. Just the images and how you create it. Do you want to talk a little bit more how you made this beautiful artwork so that everyone will know where the inspiration came from?
Well, I want to acknowledge Nancy for having the idea to create the piece itself, to create the lantern, as we're calling it now. And when I joined the committee, and she said, "Oh, well, let's all work on building this together," and I went, "I'd love to." So just actually putting the paper mache on the skeleton of the lantern, it just moved me. So, I felt like this is a community activity, and it like we're creating a piece of art, as a group. And it was very healing to do that. It felt very healing. It felt like we're doing this together. And I think artists, can uh they can express emotions, on a deeper level than just, an essay. I mean, it's just, I get tears when I see that dog, the dog waiting for his master, who's been shot and killed. It's just, but just the beauty, just seeing out in its place, where he was shot, and it was so beautiful to see it. And I said, let's do a time lapse, and just the cloud, nature just cooperated. And well, thanks to Akemi and Kiyoshi for all, their artwork. And I mean, it was a group effort, really. It was a collaborative effort. And Satsuki Murashige, my camera guy, we helped create some beautiful images too. But no, it moved me to see it there. And I thought, I'm just going to make a very simple piece, not my usual, deep documentary style thing. But I felt wonderful to create a work of art, because I think it brought a sort of joy and to create this piece. And I found it very moving for me personally, and I hope it moves other people too to think.
I know that we have some comments and questions. So I'm just going to see if there's some thoughts from the audience.
Mari, there's some questions in the chat from before when we move to the next film. Do you want me to read those out?
Yes, let's go ahead and do that. And then I want to give Claudia and others a chance to review the Spirit Rock as well. So yes, please do.
Okay. Sherry Bryant asked, or she says, beautiful film. What are next steps for the committee if they do not hear from the museum? What can individuals do to help, like write letters to the museum? And also, will this film be available for us to share with others?
So is this towards Emiko or?
It came in after Emiko's film.
Okay. So just want to try to, okay.
I do need some help with this, because this is one of the things we grapple with in our committee. I don't really know how to get it shown, but I will find out from the tech people how it can go on YouTube or whatever. But yes, I would love to see the film shared widely. So if Nancy or Masako or any of us wants to join in about how, and I did notice there was a question about, like, what is the conflict that has arisen from this. And for me, what it was we were not, that is, we, the community and the survivors, were not included in the unearthing. And Nancy, you should chime in about the story of how that came about, and Masako, because we were so happy that it had been found, and then we were dashed with great horror and sadness then to find out that it had gotten literally wrenched out of the earth with no input or participation or notice from the community, because this is not a story from the past. There are people living today who went through it. So and that was really the one of the impetuses, I think, for all of us to get involved is like, it was a little bit, in fact, this is the question we've been grappling with, what is it that has been so disturbing about this? And it was like we didn't have agency. It was like kind of the government just putting us in these camps. Like this just happened as though we had no agency in what did happen.
Emiko, can I just also add that that question of agency, I think, is so important because one of the questions from Steve Hammond is, can you share with regard to why the museum has not been willing to communicate? And one of the perennial problems has been one of agency and control of the narrative, control of our voices, and now control of the artifact, the monument, and the memorial site. And we've been advocating for nearly 4 years now, because it was dug out in July of 2021, for collaborative meetings, for them to release the videos so that our Japanese American history, our American history, can be part of the evidential record, the record of evidence. And I guess part of the story goes back to the fact that when the museum was to open in 2015, it was a very joyous, again, time and period for those of us who were survivors, and I'm a descendant. But then some of us got access, were shown part of the narrative, that is the labels that go on the museum walls and the photographs with the captions. And on first reading it, we could see that it was actually the government perspective. And then we learned that it had been written by one person who is really appreciated by the community in so many ways, Jane Beckwith, for leading this project for decades. But it turns out that she had written the entire narrative by herself. She's a lifelong resident of Delta, Utah. Her father was the editor of the newspaper. She taught high school in Delta and led her students to become interested in the history. But anyway, the narrative was not written by consulting historians or focus groups. And then eventually there was a meeting, and the funder, who was the National Park Service, had a group meeting with board members, with historians, including Franklin Odo, and then determined that the narrative had to be rewritten or the rest of the funds wouldn't be released. And that delayed the opening of the museum for 2 years. And we didn't talk about this history very much. It left the conflict and the tension because it was very uncomfortable in our community, I think, is probably too quiet. And anyway, the museum opened, and it was, the narrative was rewritten. And then 4 years later, the stone was pulled out in kind of a sequel or a repetition of not including professionals and community members. And that's why our committee formed. But the split, somebody asked, why is there a division? I don't understand it. It falls, unfortunately, into those who support the museum board's actions and those who say, this history, these artifacts are too important for just a group of very dedicated and well-meaning stewards to do by themselves without professionals, and mostly important, without the voices of Japanese Americans. And so somebody else might want to chime in there.
Well, I can say, please excuse me, but additionally, I'm not sure that it's clear to many people that the National Park Service had offered to do a professional excavation of the site when they found out about the Wakasa Memorial Stone being buried at Topaz. And then when I found out about it, the Takahashi Foundation also offered to fund a professional archaeological excavation and to have a ceremony for the Japanese community and do a documentary film. And within a couple of working days after that offer, we got, Nancy and I got, from Jane Beckwith, the director, an email saying, oh, by the way, I had it dug up this morning. I used the contractor I hired to haul trash in the area, and only a couple pieces fell off. And I was so shocked at this cavalier attitude after my offer and the National Park Service offer, all of which were kind of exemplary of the importance to the community that this finding the stone was. I mean, the archaeologists should be celebrated. We owe them for finding this. I mean, it is a huge discovery to see the extent to which our relatives, our forefathers, our ancestors went to mark this event. And for us to find it like this was we were so happy.
Well, and I want to make sure that we get some more questions. So Masako, that was great for you to let us know about that. I think Katie, am I pronouncing that right? Has a question. So unmute yourself and just ask the question.
Okay. And another division that I've experienced in trying to get the Wakasa Monument on our Day of Remembrance, I encountered survivors who were opposed to that, saying this is a local interest, a local reaction. Why are we getting involved in it? And I disagreed with them, but they were adamant about that. So for me, I'm kind of curious to hear your take on what is that division in our own Japanese American community where people were not a support of what was happening at Wakasa, that they were siding with the museum and with Jane.
This is the saddest part, that she has driven us like a wedge between us and fighting among us. And there's something really profoundly awful about that. It is the biggest shock. It adds to the trauma for me.
May I add to that?
Please.
Yeah.
So I think part of this too is it is on our 6 points that we would really like more collaboration from the Japanese American community on what should happen with the stone now, because it's not just up to our committee. It's also not just up to the museum. There are so many survivors and descendants left that it should be a community thing where we say, hey, you know, what do you all think should happen with the stone now that it has been unearthed? So we wanted to also be really inclusive to the community. We don't want it to just be about what we want.
I think that's a good point. And I also want to, if anybody else has any questions, please do put it in the chat because Lauren is looking at that chat. If you have something, raise your hand. But I also want to wrap it back to Claudia because, again, expressing in art form, the film that she showed is really powerful. And it's another way to get the voice out again. So I do want to say is, Claudia, I want to acknowledge other people in the audience who helped with the making of the paper stone. And would you like to share some of those memories of the making? Because I know we kind of talked a little bit about it, but I wanted to go kind of deeper into that conversation.
Well, I think you should also talk to, you know, Kiyoshi and Akemi and whoever else is here who was involved in actually creating the piece. Because it was, like I said, it was a healing activity. Then just seeing it, you know, and it took, again, the collaboration of everybody there to create the film. And it evokes emotions that, you know, it just is very moving in a way that, you know, I mean, it was plus all the frustration of dealing with the actual stone, to have created our own, you know, replica of the stone felt empowering in a way, you know, that our committee, you know, our group of people made you know, an art object that that became a vehicle for expressing, you know, some of this frustration, some of this sadness and anger, and I've that is going to be brought to all these other locations, I think is also very good. It's showing how interactive it is. People want to touch it, you know, even though they know it's a model of the stone. It's like, yeah, we want to touch it because it has meaning. You know, this stone, the actual stone has meaning. And while this is an art piece, it also is a way to focus that those emotions. And I think that's a very a wonderful thing to have, and that you have been created. And thanks to Nancy, for suggesting we do this. And
maybe we should go to talk about the origin, because it's not me.
Well,
I wanted to say, is there anybody else in the audience that did help, just to acknowledge?
Kiyoshi.
Did anybody else want
Yes.
to? Okay.
Tomorrow starts the Cherry Blossom Festival. And last year, there was a small group of us that had a booth there. We took the paper monument there, and people were asking, how did they make it? Where did it go? So I have a big poster board I've been working on. Hopefully I'll finish it tonight and get it to Nancy. But it shows a group of us that put the monument together. At first there was a rattan frame, and people were tying other pieces of rattan to form it. And after we completed that, we got tissue paper, or I don't know what the name of the paper is. Anyway, we soaked it in glue, Elmer's glue, and it was pretty watery, and we applied it on the frame. And it was really I don't know how to explain it, but there was a group of us, and we were all involved, and we really wanted to satisfy ourselves by helping create this paper mache item. And then so I have about maybe 50 photos I have on a board that shows everybody how we constructed it. And I also have the locations that it was displayed at. So if, when people come to the Cherry Blossom Festival, they won't have to ask us questions about it. They could see it on our photos. So
It's going to be there tomorrow in San Francisco, Japan.
Right. I'll finish it after I get off this call.
Only tomorrow, only Saturday.
Yeah, it'll be there.
So I also want to say is that not only has the stone, the paper mache artwork has traveled to different sites, but also we had it at a conference last year in Utah, and public historians were able to see in a session. So I want to say is thank you for sharing that powerful art piece, because it spoke volumes to people who are not of the Japanese American community, but of the public historians, and who are very passionate about interpretation and the preservation of history. So I want to say thank you for that. So anyway, I want to say thank you so much for those comments. And like I said, I'm going to move on, but the stone was at the paper mache artwork was at a conference last year, and it was a chance for public historians to also embrace and understand and also support what is going on here. So I want to go ahead on next with our program. Now we'll have Nancy Ukai, even though you've heard from her. She's a Topaz descendant whose research for the 50 Objects website led to the discovery of the original Wakasa stone. We'll talk about the backstory of how the paper mache sculpture came to be. The artist Kiyoshi Ina, who built the under structure for the paper mache, is in Oakland, California, an Oakland, California artist. He could not be with us tonight because he's working, but we do have some slides that Nancy's going to show.
Hi, everybody. I just want to really say that if not for the archaeologists who took this map and had curiosity and went out there, we would not be here together. The stone would not have been unearthed because everyone assumed that it was demolished. And the paper stone would not be with us if not for Jeffrey Yasuo Mansfield, whose picture is in the bottom left-hand corner. And he was a speaker at a Japanese American confinement sites conference 2 years ago. It was held in Los Angeles, and the topic was monuments and memory. he talked about his company. It's a nonprofit called Mass Design Group. They create social justice memorials and spaces and are responsible for one of the most important memorial spaces in the country, the Equal Justice Initiative National Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama, which is dedicated to the victims of racial terror lynchings. They also designed a memorial in Bismarck, North Dakota, where Japanese Americans and Japanese immigrants were incarcerated during World War II as quote unquote alien enemies. And that's being built through the gracious donation of the United Tribes Technical College of Land. So it's a collaborative project. Anyway, at this conference, I had presented on the Wakasa Memorial Stone, and afterwards he came up to me and said, he's actually deaf, so he came with his interpreter and said, what's going to happen to the stone? It's on the construction pallet in the back of the museum. Where's it going to finally end up? Will it be at JANM, the Japanese American National Museum? Will it be the Smithsonian? Will it be at the Topaz Museum? And I said, I don't know, because we really want to have community meetings, led by professionals and talk about this really important decision. And then he said, why don't community members make their own stone out of washi, Japanese paper? And that just was such a beautiful thought. Why don't we make our own? Why don't we have our agency and our creativity and channel our love and our energy into something that could be our own? And so, next slide, please. So this, I don't know, Max, is this become a movie or anything? Yoshi Asai, this is actually a little video, which I don't know if it'll run or not. Yoshi Asai is an artist in Oakland, and Dana Kawano, who's a Berkeley artist, introduced our group to him. And unfortunately, the movie's not going, but it shows him working with a small, two foot tall little maquette, a small structure made out of rattan. And what he does is he puts on some tissue paper on it to show us. Anyway, it was 2 feet tall. And then he said, how about it? Do I have to make it exactly a replica? And I said, no, you're an artist, And so he made one that's 6 feet tall. So his sample was 2 feet, and the beautiful armature he made out of rattan, which is, used to make furniture. He soaked it in the bathtub, got it wet and pliable, and then made this, sculpture. And this is Patrick Hayashi, who was born at Topaz and narrated the film, and Gail Nambu, a Topaz descendant. Next, please. Before we papered it. And then we took the washi paper, tracing paper, and as Kiyoshi said, we kind of used this solution, which was a mix of Elmer's glue and water, and just laid it on. I guess it took a few hours, but it was a really creative time when we felt unleashed, because the stone is still strapped to the construction site. We don't have, not on the construction pallet, and just to be able to create something had the spirit for us of being liberated, frankly. And Brandon Shimoda had visited the stone, the writer and poet, Yonsei poet, and he said, Japanese people believe that stones have spirits, and I think the stone is lonely. And he talked about how the actual stone is sitting on the pallet, feeling humiliated, laying on the pallet for 4 years. It needs a companion to console it. And so I feel like we were creating a companion, we're creating something to console ourselves. And anyway, next, please. And just to show you that Yoshi is amazing. He's an artist, and he's made paper mache objects before. The one on the left, you can see how large it is called Ghost Lantern. And the one on the right is a 25-foot paper mache whale, which was used in a theater performance. So what he really also brought to this lantern, which when we talked to Jeffrey Yasuo Mansfield, we didn't know what we were, what this could be. And Yoshi likes to illuminate his sculptures. Next, please. And we were thinking, maybe what we can do is make this paper mache lantern and we can light it inside. And then I was at a conference called Remembering Spaces of Internment, which is a French and American consortium. And people wrote tags, memory, ancestor tags in memory of ancestors who inspired them, and people had ancestors who died during World War II in the death camps. At any rate, next, please. We were gonna paper mache those onto the monument, but when we saw Yoshi's illuminated lantern, we realized that would actually cover up the light. And then Glenn Mitsui, whose work you're going to see in a little while. Oh, you saw it in Claudia's, her film. That became a game changer because then the lantern became a screen or a place where we could tell the story of James Wakasa killed at Topaz, of Shoichi Okamoto, who was shot by a guard in Tule Lake, by the two men, young men, 17 and 21 years old, James Ito and Katsuji Kanagawa, who were killed, fatally shot at Manzanar. And Glenn has taken on this incredible, beautiful, he creates these beautiful short video poems that are projected on the lantern. So then obviously we weren't going to place anything on it that would obscure that. Next, please. So we packed it in the car, and as Mari Carpenter said, we took it to Salt Lake City, where the National Council on Public History was holding a conference. And that conference took place exactly 1 year ago today on April 11th, 2024. So the odds of the conference taking place during the month when Wakasa was killed, the fact that our proposal to the NCPH conference was accepted, the fact that they assigned our session on the day that he was killed felt very karmic. And so we brought the lantern, and 90 people, none of whom have a connection to Wakasa because he was a bachelor. He died with no kin in the US. And it's easy for these stories of racial violence to be buried, but especially when you're a single person. He was 63 years old, had spent 40 years of his life in the US. It was very moving to have a room full of people hold a moment of silence for him. And we had the lantern there as a reminder of why we're there. Next, please. The following day, Akemi Ina, Kiyoshi Ina, Claudia Katayanagi, Satsuki Murashige, the videographer, and Yoshi Asai, the five of them went to Topaz, and in the evening laid the lantern, illuminated lantern, on the ground. And we just really felt, oh, it's lightweight, it can be carried, and it gives off light, it can illuminate dark histories. It's not like a marble monument that can't move. Next, please. So the next thing was, oh my gosh, last year was a Tule Lake pilgrimage, which only occurs once every 2 years. We were invited to take the paper lantern to the Tule Lake pilgrimage, which is in northeast corner of California near the Oregon border. And Glenn again made a short video, I'm talking like 2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes, to project on the lantern. And so we gave us a short talk, and this was the Wakasa story. Next, please. This is a picture of a photo of Emiko Omori and Glenn on the right. This is kind of lifting the curtain on how we do this. They're standing in front of the Castle Rock iconic landscape at Tule Lake. And then after this was over, night fell, and we drove about a mile or so to the left. I'm not sure what direction that is. And that we went to the site where James Okamoto was shot by a guard as he got out of a truck which was delivering lumber into the camp, and the guard supposedly felt that he was being too proud and shot him, and he died. Next, please. So this is where it's an unmarked spot. It's where Okamoto was killed, and it's thanks to the work of the Tule Lake Committee and Hiroshi Shimizu, who by looking at a lot of maps, photographs, and archival materials, determined that he was shot at the old historic gate. So we projected this Glenn's video onto the monument, onto the paper thing, and it was a little scary because, it's a red area, and we've got this strange white thing out there that's all lit up, and the three of us are out there, and somebody drove by on his motorcycle and stopped and stared at us. And I must admit, it was a little scary. But we were able to use this picture of Okamoto onto that we got from social media. And later I talked to the person who put it on because I couldn't reach her and said, I'm so sorry that we used it without your permission. We have to get permission from you. And she said, I put it on social media because this was a story that didn't have a face. It needs to be told. And then she said to me, I didn't learn about my uncle's death until I was in my 30s. And I was at Thanksgiving and they were talking about my uncle being shot at Tule Lake. And when she talked to her father, she said that his eyes watered, so she didn't ask him about it, but they never talked about it again. So these stories are extremely painful, and not only did the government want to repress them and suppress them, but we within our community are so traumatized that we also silence ourselves because it's just too painful. Next, please. The monument travels, and we were invited to bring it to the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco during February for Day of Remembrance. And that was in February. Emiko, can you, or Max, can you play the 1 minute video? At the San Francisco Asian Art Museum, we encourage people to touch the paper monument. Normally in museums, you don't do that, but we don't think of this as a fine artwork, but as something which belongs to people. And next, please. And the original stone, when it was built near the barbed wire fence, would have been something that our parents and grandparents would have touched. They would have left a flower, they would have said a prayer. And so touch is an important part of its existence. Next, please. We're going to be taking it to the San Francisco Cherry Blossom Festival, as Kiyoshi said. And I guess our purpose now has become unburying these military murders and the subject of death in the camps, which is a taboo subject. It's something that we don't discuss among families. The cemeteries, the deaths are not really talked about in history books or in museums. And this portable monument allows us to now take it to these places in Utah, California, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. So we're going to take it in 2 weeks to Manzanar. And now I'd like you to see Glenn Mitsui's a preview of the video he's made to project on the lantern at Manzanar. And Reverend Duncan Williams will lead the procession. And we are hoping to have the words of survivors and descendants who remember James Ito and Katsuji Okamoto to read at the ceremony, which will be at night at the site where they were shot and fatally shot. It's about a mile away from the Ireito, the famous iconic obelisk-shaped memorial at Manzanar. And that Ireito has become the center, as you know, the spiritual center of Manzanar. But it was built after Ito and Kanagawa were shot. And one thinks that certainly everyone must have been thinking about them and the 10 who were wounded during the uprising at Manzanar of December 6, 1942. Max, could you show Glenn's video poem?
you. That was a really powerful film. I want to just introduce Glenn Mitsui, a Seattle-based artist who is a Topaz, Tule Lake, and Heart Mountain descendant. And we just viewed his work. And Glenn, can you say a few words about your work and just to talk about the inspiration of it?
This one, they're evolving each one. Like I'm finding there's not a lot of information about like James Wakasa. There's no photos. So I have to rely a lot on Nancy and everybody. With Kanagawa and Ito, again, most of the information is about the riot and all of the people involved in the riot and what happened, what led up to it. And when it comes to the two young men who were killed, it's almost like, you just find his dying last words. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Kanagawa's. And nothing really about Ito. So, the goal of the monument is of the Spirit Stone is to unbury the history and the stories. And hopefully by us doing this, a descendant will see this and come forward and help us fill in this story, help us learn who these young men were. I mean, he was 17 years old, Ito was 17, Kanagawa was 21. So, the creative process on this one was different than like the Asian Art Museum or Topaz or Tule Lake, because with those I would create like maybe 3 final images and then I would dissect them. With this one, I created about 21 images, different, parts of the story, and then brought motion to it all together and brought it together like that. To me, it's like a visual prayer. I wanted to leave a lot of space for people to kind of like just be in the meditation. I mean, the music I picked, I was actually looking for something. I researched that certain megahertz that is good for meditation and healing, right? And that was kind of the basis of the soundtrack like that. So I don't know what I'm saying.
No, but it is powerful. And Glenn, we thank you for just working on those pieces. And I also like the fact that you said it's a prayer. And you're giving space for people to react, but also have some space for some peace and also just reflection. So I think this piece is ongoing, as you can see. So do you want to comment on that? And then we're going to go to another section of our program.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing about the Spirit Stone is that it's portable and that we can take it places and tell the stories of these men who were shot and killed, and then take it to other pilgrimages and share the story of what we've been learning, I just hope people find them engaging. It's kind of like engaging people on a different level. I'm an experiential learner, so hopefully I'm creating something that would talk to people who are also like me. I have a hard time sitting through a lecture, so that was kind of this approach, but I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, I think you did. And I don't know if we have any time for other questions, but we do want to give some time for to turn it back over to either Nancy or Emiko.
Can I just mention that, so we're taking it to Manzanar, the pilgrimage, in 2 weeks, and then where 2 people died. And then we'll be going to New Mexico, Lordsburg, an internment camp for the immigrants, and then to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, next year, which is the 250th anniversary of our country's birth, and one wonders where we'll be then. But I think that we really feel now that this stone is not just about one person, James Wakasa. It's about all the nearly 2,000 people who died in the camps. It's about the people who were killed by the military and who have been forgotten. And it also provided a window for us as Asian Americans to see the racial violence in our country. And I think it would be really important for us to work collaboratively. I mean, if we're in Oklahoma, it would mean so much to be able to go very humbly, for example, to say Black Wall Street, where funds have been withdrawn for oral histories of that massacre. And we do not have the right to tell other people's stories, but how can we be sympathetic and show our support for other communities who've suffered racial violence much longer and, you know, in larger numbers for our community? And I know it's not a competition, but we have to find a way to work together. And this lantern has become a vehicle for that. So anyway, thank you, Mari, for asking me to close off. I'm now going to show something a little bit funny because this lantern travels around. It was in actually our living room for a little while, and then we finally got a home for it. So now don't go away yet. We do have a little surprise at the end, but Max, can you show a video that Emiko Omori took when the lantern came home from the Asian Art Museum? It now goes home to bed at its home in a public storage unit and prepares for its next journey, which will actually be tomorrow, to San Francisco, Japantown. So please keep an eye on our website, wakasamemorial.org. Sign up for our newsletter. We'll be launching a website about Wakasa Spirit Stone shortly. And Emiko would now like to say some closing words.
Okay, so before we end tonight, we want to do a big shout out for two of our staunchest, most hardworking, amazingly creative, compassionate supporters, Akemi and Kiyoshi Ina, both Topaz survivors. We could not have done all the things we have without them. And a very special shout out to Akemi, who was born the day after Mr. Wakasa's murder on April 12th, 2025. So happy birthday, dear Akemi. And if you're there, we wanted to sing you happy birthday. But if you're not, well, we send you our best and thank you. Now I turn it back to you, Mari.
My tech person is still trying to help me out. We've got a lot of tech thing going on. So I want to say thank you all for participating. If we have so many remaining questions in the chat, we're going to be collecting those. Lauren, do we have any remaining questions in the chat before we leave that we missed, maybe?
There are still more questions in the chat, so we are going to work on answering those. I am putting in the chat also our website. I hope you guys will sign our petition and sign up for our newsletter.
Okay. And so we really want to hear from you. If you're in the San Francisco area, the Cherry Blossom Festival, come see us tomorrow. We would love for you to come by our booth. And also, like I said, check the website. We've got some other upcoming events going on there. We do want you to be, we need your voice. So just like Lauren said, please sign our petition. But we have some more upcoming events throughout. And just like Nancy has mentioned, all the things that is the paper mache, the spirit rock is going to move around. So if you do want to have it at your site, let us know that as well.
And we just heard from Max, Mari, that the Emiko's film and the others, probably not Glenn's because that's a work in progress, will be made available this weekend to anyone.
Okay. So just like I said, this was a very powerful time. So I want to say thank you all. If you're at the East Coast, Central Time, Mountain Time, and Pacific Time, thank you for taking the time out to join us for this really important day, April 11th. And to honor Mr. Wakasa. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Akemi.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear
Akemi. Happy birthday to you.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.